Margret Sinclair. She works for RAC, which is Refugee Action Collective. I'll let her speak about it in more detail, but this is a woman that has been speaking to people on Nauru and Manus daily for the last 5 years. For the last 22 months, she has been protesting every Saturday morning. This is a woman that cares about this issue, that is an expert on this issue, and I look forward to meeting her and talking about it in more detail. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hand together for Margret Sinclair.
Now it's time to learn a little thing or two about the world. We're gonna learn a thing or two. Let's get serious.
Welcome, Margret. How are you?
I'm pretty well, thank you.
Yes, we've had a couple of microphone issues before the show. You might have heard the large bang that happened during Michael Schaefer's bit. We actually had to trade microphones. One completely turned off. It all didn't work. So Margret has proudly, she ripped off her microphone. She said, "Robin, have mine. Please, you're the host. I'll just take a handheld." So she's here with a handheld, unfortunately, but may I say it looks beautiful on you.
Thank you. I'm pretty much used to holding a microphone sometimes at rallies, so
That's it.
more comfortable with this.
So tell me a little bit about RAC and how you fit in with it.
RAC is a totally grassroots volunteer organisation. Anyone's welcome to come along to the Monday night meetings, which are held at the ANMF House in Elizabeth Street. And we try and organise to make a change to the policies and to the laws that are affecting refugees. And we do that in a variety of ways: rallies, forums. We have RAC stalled various places around Melbourne and here tonight, and just have a chance of talking to people about what's actually happening in Australia's detention centres.
And so I guess it goes without saying, what is happening currently? What is the major kind of crisis with refugees at the moment?
Well, I think the biggest crisis is that people who were sent to Manus and Nauru have been there 6 years, and they don't really have a way off the island unless they are able to resettle in the United States or unless they are medevaced to Australia.
And so what does medevac mean? And I've heard a bit of medevac. The medevac bill is currently being debated, am I correct? Or
Well, it became law in February of this year.
Okay, so describe what the medevac bill is for everyone here.
It's law that means that the decision for someone to be taken to Australia for medical reasons, medical treatment, is in the hands of doctors rather than bureaucrats. So it's up to 2 doctors to agree that someone needs to be taken to Australia for treatment, and then the minister is supposed to approve that, pending on security checks and that type of thing. And so far, approximately 100 people have come to Australia under that bill. A week or so ago, Scott Morrison, the new Australian Prime Minister, in the newly formed Parliament, said we want to get rid of the law, and in the lower house they passed, I suppose, the decision that they would repeal it. But it's not repealed until it goes to the upper house and gets debated there, and that's not going to happen until November because they're going to have a Senate inquiry into it all first. So
with the 2 major parties that we have, what are their stance on refugees? What are the differences between them? And why is there such a narrative kind of being played about these refugees?
It's a very big question. So the narrative is that I suppose people who were sent to Manus and Nauru and who have come to Australia, they've been demonised by both sides of politics. They're called country shoppers and queue jumpers and all sorts of things, and it delegitimises their claim for asylum. And their claims are very much real. And both sides of politics have played into that narrative, and it really is all about changing or getting the general public to perceive refugees as threats or as people who are not deserving of refugee status or in some way are fake or something like that. And it's quite destructive to the people who have sought asylum.
And is it only people that seek asylum through like a boat that are put on these islands, or is it the other methods?
Well, we're an island, aren't we?
Yes.
There's only two ways of getting here, unless you want to swim a very long way. So it's by plane or it's by boat. They're the only two ways of people arriving. You can go on the Australian Parliament House website and you will find that it says that no matter what way a person arrives, they won't be discriminated against. Mm-hmm. Now, despite that being there on the website, anyone who arrives by boat is supposed to go to or be sent to Manus and Nauru. And anyone who arrives by plane avoids that, and they have a chance of living in the community on a bridging visa and putting in their claim for asylum while they're free.
So what do you think it is about this whole boat? You know, I mean, what's different about it? Because I remember, I don't know when it was, but probably when I was getting, coming cognizant of political environment throughout the country. I don't know, it was like a John Howard election, and he was talking about stopping the boats, and that was obviously on the Liberal side of things. But there was some strong opposition from the other side, and now we've come 10, 15 years down the track, and I feel like I went to the election booths the other day and was like, I can't vote for someone who doesn't want to stop the boats. Do you think there's a reason why that's happening? Like, could you put it into words at all?
I don't know why politicians are hung up on boats. I really don't.
Yeah.
There's probably been a bit of a history of, Vietnamese people coming on boats, and I suppose there's this big fear factor of somehow or other we're going to be invaded, which we're not. Very few people really come on boats. It's just, I think it's terribly sad that we are treating people badly based on their mode of arrival. Mm-hmm. People who arrive on boats, people who arrive by planes, they've escaped the same dangers. Mm-hmm. They've escaped the same wars, they've escaped the same persecutions, torture, most horrific things that are happening in their home countries. And I think it should be irrelevant. Yeah. It doesn't matter how someone arrives. Let's just have a look at the claim for asylum and judge it on that.
And so I think when you hear stories that you tell, Margaret, and you see images like this, it's easy to feel overwhelmed with the amount of things happening. And it feels like, especially with social media these days, when you see such an array of problems, you're quick to feel insignificant. And I wonder, what things do you do to make yourself motivated, or what things can an individual do to help the cause in a small way or in an achievable way?
I don't know that any small action can be insignificant. All of the actions are important. It's about the persistence, and I'm quite sure that in the end we will win through. People can do all sorts of things. So, like for me, for instance, I protest every Saturday at Belgrave at the roundabout for an hour, and that might sound a strange thing to do, but we take photos of ourselves, we send that to our local politician. We are constituents. We should be heard by our local members. And so that's not insignificant. In a great many ways, detention centres are supposed to be invisible or not seen or so remote that nobody knows what's actually happening inside them. So to always shine a light on what's happening in there, to get the photos out, to get the videos out, to keep talking to people, there's a million things that people can do.
Maybe something like just taking any information you get with a bit of a grain of salt, considering that there are a lot of different powers that are controlling the media, the way the information is distributed. So, yes, you might hear something about, well, I want you to believe in what we're talking about. But obviously, you know, someone's going to say, stop the boats, oh, you're Clive Palmer, you can't do this. It's like, well, you know, you've just got to resist reacting, I think, sometimes to these sort of inflammatory remarks that you might hear.
There's a lot of inflammatory remarks out there, and some of them are very, very racist and very destructive. And I think, what can you say if it's so ingrained in someone's psyche that somehow or other boats are bad or refugees are bad or something like that? Because the mainstream media have had a lot to do with that government narrative of saying that we're being invaded or being flooded or somehow or other there are refugees who are playing the system, and that's not the case at all.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Margaret. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. If anyone is interested in RAC or in Margaret's story, I'm sure Margaret will be around talking to you all behind the stall over here. If you have any questions or if you just want to continue the conversation. Also, if you go on the Full Hour Show website, you can also find links to all the great things that Margaret and her team and RAC are doing. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.